Welcome to Soul via Soul, the podcast where we embark on a journey of self-love and true wellness. I'm your host, Jada, and I'm absolutely delighted to have you here with me as we dive into all things mind, body, and soul. Now, what do you say we get this thing started? Let's dive in. I am so excited to welcome to the podcast today a longtime friend, probably my longest childhood friend, a friend who I spent slumber parties with in the coolest bedroom there ever was known to man because your wallpaper and your drapes and your bedspread all matched. I will never forget that.
I got a guest room that's the same thing.
I will never forget losing my glasses at your lake house and diving off the dock to try to find them.
Oh my God, that's right.
And
I was thinking about that. This morning, but the lake this morning, you in the lake.
Yes. And you were in my wedding.
I was in your wedding. Yes.
Libby Callaway is an icon to me. You are. I didn't even think I was going to cry, but I just might because we haven't connected since childhood. And I was thinking this morning, when Facebook first came out, I didn't know anything about anything. And you popped up as a person that I might know. And I texted you or I sent you a message and I didn't realize that we were having what I thought was a private message and it was for the whole world to see. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how are you? And you were the first person that connected me to social media. And that was the first time that I thought, oh my gosh, there's a purpose for this. And now, I'm using it as a kind of a launch pad for my businesses.
Yeah.
And that's how we reconnected again. So I am delighted to welcome my longtime ever coolest girl in the whole world, the most famous person I know, Libby Callaway. So Libby, I am delighted to have you here. So let's talk about you. Tell us a little bit about you and how your story could potentially help those people who are listening.
Well, we were just talking about this before you started rolling, but I am a total open book when it comes to mental health. I basically, I was struggling when we knew each other and nobody knew, it's because I feel like in the 70s and 80s when we were growing up together, it was, that era, people didn't talk about it. There was, my dad constantly called psychiatrists witch doctors, not constantly, but when they would come up, he just thought he'd had some bad, my dad was an attorney and he had some bad witnesses, I guess. But, so it was never really a welcome thing. And it was you pull your lip in, what do you have to be upset about? And there was a lot of guilt and shame associated with it. And I really internalized a lot of that. So, I had what looked like a happy childhood, but I think I've probably been depressed since I was a small child. And it didn't really start to, it's funny. It's people don't take you seriously until you start to look different or something really starts to click. For me, it was losing weight. And it was sort of, clinging onto anorexia. So when I was in college, that's basically how I got to therapy was, eating disorder. So I was 19 years old, going to my sophomore year in college and basically subsisting on popcorn and running, 4 miles a day before I'd go to work and then staying out late, I was living in Cleveland, our former hometown, and going to Chattanooga to see my boyfriend at night and drinking and driving back. I mean, just absolutely not living like I should have. But I did finally get into therapy and that was good, but I kept losing weight my sophomore year. So, I don't know. I kind of got threatened. I was threatened. Threatened's not the right word, but it was suggested to me that I would not be able to return to school and would not be able to engage in some of the extracurricular things that I wanted to do in college. And so I had to learn to eat again. And I was seeing a really great psychiatrist then who had gotten me on some meds And so I've been taking medication for 34 years. And I'm definitely a lifer. Like I've been, on different things. There's some constants. Well, Butrin's a constant that's been in my life for like over 25 years. And but I was taking Prozac early in the day.
Yeah.
But I've, it's, I don't know. I go back and forth on when I started like drinking alcoholically. I think that, I grew up in a culture that was very accepting of drinking a lot. There's a lot of binge drinking in Cleveland, and my family always had alcohol around. I don't think that that was why at all. I don't think it was encouraged necessarily. It wasn't frowned upon not to. It was just
Always
something that I
there.
loved to. Yeah. And also, I was really uncomfortable in my skin as a kid and as a young adult. And that was a way for me to kind of get out of it and, get out of my body, honestly, and like get out of my head and to not feel anything. And that became a lot more comfortable. I moved to New York in 1995 to get my master's degree at NYU in cultural criticism. It's in the journalism department. It's for people who wanted to write about the arts and, be cultural critics. It's basically a master's degree in pop culture and how to write about it, which was amazing and ideal.
That is the
So
coolest stuff ever.
it is the coolest gig ever. So, or the coolest major ever. It's sort of like an American Studies program, which I think is the coolest major. But I got to New York and I'd gotten a job as a graduate assistant. So I was working for the university and also taking classes and getting used to being, from East Tennessee, moving to New York, and started drinking by myself. And I think that was when it really changed,
Yeah.
and it got worse through my time there. Like I was unemployed after school, and I was drinking a lot then just to like buy, to kind of while the time away.
Mhm.
And was still really insecure, even though it looked like I was doing really well. I think that's the thing. I'm always really good at hiding it. Like people don't understand that I'm really an introvert when I have an extrovert's job and an extrovert's composition,
Yeah.
or disposition and composition. I look like I'm an extrovert,
I'm the same
but
way. I
yeah. Oh my God.
I am give me a blanket and a book and a journal and a cozy cup of tea and just leave me alone. Like
Oh my God. Yes.
either that or put me in the garden and let me be near my plants and I'll just talk to them and have a great old time. But I, like you, have to perform for my job. And
Yeah.
I get that you have to look like you're okay.
Yeah.
That's I think we'll talk more about that, but I think that that's so very common. So I'm just glad that you're saying that because that in and of itself gives people permission to go and exhale. Like we all are wearing these masks of not perfection necessarily, but okayness. Like I'm fine. I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm really good. You need to look the other way.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. And like it's really what I was taught to do. You're supposed to look like everything's fine. You don't want anybody to think there's anything wrong, that it's about you. That's what I was taught.
Well, your
And
life did look perfect to me, I will say.
that's,
I
yeah.
always felt like to be you. That's what I longed for was to be you. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of that, I love my mom so much, but like creating that perfect appearance was very much something, she wanted.
Yeah.
And, um, and I think I felt so stressed out by it and so unprepared to present like that. Like you couldn't ever let your guard down, you know?
Yeah.
It
I
was
can see
something you
that.
had to be doing. And so I never got to really relax. But yeah, I didn't get to do that until a lot later. And now I'm like you. It's like I didn't do anything this weekend. I used getting my vaccination as an excuse to literally not talk to anybody yesterday and just take a nap in the middle of the day and then watch movies. It was great.
Oh,
But and then felt guilty about it, and then ended up working 4 hours in the evening. It's like it just still comes back, the workaholism. But but in New York, like I ended up getting a really great job at the New York Post, which is the famous tabloid up there. And I'd moved to New York thinking I was going to write about music, and I ended up writing about fashion, which has set the stage for the rest of my career. So I got the job at the Post in 1997 as an assistant on the women's page, and then was made a staff writer, writing specifically about fashion and pop culture. And then a couple years later, they made me the editor. And so I made that job into what I wanted it to be. So I wanted to do a fashion supplement. So, I talked Lachlan Murdoch into giving us 10 grand to put together this fashion supplement, which was 10 grand went a long way in the 90s. And it still lives today under a different name, but the concept was there that I created in I guess it was early 2000s. But yeah, it was right after, I think it's 2002.
This is why you're the coolest person I
Oh
know.
yeah. Well, I just see opportunities, and like I make them, I pursue them, and that's always been something I've enjoyed doing. But it's like, but then I tend to get myself into a state of overwhelm because I don't know. I'm not a terrific delegator. I work on that every day. Like I'm actually working on that today in particular. I had to write a scope for a potential employee or a potential freelancer earlier. And I was like, okay, what am I willing to let go? What do I really need done? And let me let go more than I want to. But anyway, the Post job was really great, but it was also a lot of drinking, like, going out. And especially as I got more successful and more well known by the industry, you're hanging out with Donatella Versace. It's like, I don't know. And it's a lot of stress
Yeah.
for somebody who's not prepared for it
Yeah.
and didn't really know how to do, I'm teaching myself the whole time how to be prepared for these things, and feeling really inferior too, which is another problem. But but I was going to Europe for the fashion shows, and I'd go out and cover the Oscars and do all these fun things. But ultimately, I'd end up by myself drinking at some point. So it was becoming a problem. I was working with Australians, another problem. I love some Australians, but man, they can party. Um, so I really like had this revelation, like everything was going great in my career, and nobody, when I announced that I was going to leave, and I kind of had this divine intervention too. It was like I was washing my face. It was October of 2003. I was washing my face and on a Friday night, and I looked in the mirror, and all I can say is it felt metallic. Something went bing in my chest, and I went, oh my God, I don't want to be here. And then I realized I could leave. It's like this agency suddenly crept in a place where it wasn't before.
I love that
And
word, agency.
I do too. I've been using it a lot lately. It's like something that, you create that agency, you allow yourself to have it. But you've got to decide that you have it.
Mhm.
People can't tell you you have it really. It's like you've got to believe it.
Yeah.
So, and I did believe it. And so I was gone in 3 months. Like I made it, I was like, whoa, I made it happen. So I moved to Nashville. I wanted to go to Nashville because I would come down here frequently. It's where I live now. Would come down frequently and see friends. And I knew that it was the southern city I wanted to move to. And I wanted to move to the South. I didn't want to go to Los Angeles. I didn't want to go anywhere else. And I think also I knew that if I was interested in working as a stylist, so if I wasn't able to make it as a writer, I would have something to fall back on because I knew people in the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
So I got a job at the Tennessean, which is the daily newspaper here, as a features editor. And I was describing it. I was talking about it to somebody on Saturday. I'm like, those Wile E. Coyote cartoons where he's going so fast that he hits the wall and kind of goes like this.
Yeah.
That's what it was like for me. So I was so used to like hard charging and just, like in a very kind way, but like just being really busy and like having a daily schedule that was full and deadlines and hustling and having things change constantly. And I got there and it was like crickets.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't a match for my constitution or my the work. I wasn't ready to slow down. but I kept on drinking, started dating the star reporter at the newspaper who broke my heart pretty quickly, like it's like 4 months in. And I just went downhill. So I spent like 4 months kind of going, whoo, losing weight and continuing to drink a lot, like crying at work a lot, just not being able to hold my shit together. I hope I can curse, I'm sorry. Hold it together. And I was like, something has to change. Like I thought I was going to quit drinking. I didn't quit drinking. I couldn't do it. So I wasn't very healthy. So I was seeing, like, when I moved to town, 3 people told me that I asked for recommendations for counseling, for therapists, said the same name. So my therapist, Larly Doby, I've been seeing her for 19 years. She's the one who sent me to rehab set me up with rehab. So I went to Arizona, to Cottonwood, to Tucson, and was there for 5 weeks. And went in May 10th of 2005 was the last time I had a drink.
Wow.
And I was there for 5 weeks. During that time, I quit smoking. I've been smoking since I was in high school. So I was able to quit smoking too, which has been really great. And, got back, quit my job about 6 months in, wasn't a good fit, and decided to go in other directions. But the whole time it was really stressful, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I didn't know where to look for help. And I'm not very good at asking for help a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So while I was sober, I wasn't really white knuckling it, because I wasn't like not wanting to drink, but I've needed something to hold on to, and I didn't know what it was. And for me, kind of the substitute for alcohol or eating or whatever has been work. So I am a little bit of a workaholic. But it took me about 10 years, honestly, I didn't date for 10 years. I kind of turned everything off in that area. And then realized when I was about 48, honestly, I was like, oh my God, I forgot to find a partner. I've been so focused on all this other stuff. And then when you're in your late 40s, and I mean, it happens every day that people fall in love at all ages. But I'm used to having a goal and pursuing the goal and getting what I set out for, or something along the same lines. And it's been really hard I'm now 53, finding a partner that I'm looking for. So that was something that, like, I think I needed to get well enough to, like, figure out what I wanted.
Sure.
And since then I've made several grand mistakes, but I mean a real thing for sociopaths. But
I love how honest and open you are. And honestly, that gives people so much
yeah.
permission to say, oh my gosh, I didn't realize. And there's so many things I'm going to hit on, but I want you to keep telling your
Yeah,
story.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
Well,
want,
honestly, and I'll tell you, that's why I do it. That's why I talk about it,
yeah,
because, like, I am very passionate about destigmatizing mental illness.
yes.
Like, and I use those words together, mental illness. I have a mental illness. I'm mentally ill. Like, I think that we've got to normalize, we've got to have a comfort level talking about that, and it's kind of like, it does sound harsh. Like, it makes people uncomfortable, but that's kind of I don't know, that's the power of it, really, is
It
that people need
is.
to be a little
And
uncomfortable about it.
people, and they are still a little bit uncomfortable about it, which is why I was so excited to have you here, because again, in my eyes, you're like a movie star, right? Like, you're famous. And
Yeah.
so, and the fact that you have this ability to talk so openly about, yes, I was an alcoholic. Yes, I had an eating disorder. Yes, I went to rehab. Um, yes, I take medications, and I've been in therapy for
Mm.
years. Like, all of those things, typically, sometimes people want to hide because
Yeah.
they are like the flaws, that because it's really hard to be authentic and
Mhm.
real and not say, here's all the stuff that I go through and has happened to me. Because when you do that, number one, you give other people permission to seek help and to say,
Yeah.
I'm kind of struggling. I'm and staying busy is something that is, and that hustle culture mentality is
Yeah.
something that um I've been guilty of myself. And I get in this zone of staying busy. And what staying busy doesn't allow us to do is feel our feelings.
Feel. Exactly.
It doesn't allow us to feel.
Exactly. And there's a lot of avoidance that I still deal with for sure. Like I'm the thing is I'm now aware, quite aware of what I'm doing, of my tactics. But yeah, and I think that like having a consistent therapist has been really important, like somebody who just knows my ups and downs. Like, and I've still like I went through a pretty major depression in the late aughts that was pretty debilitating. I remember telling a friend I felt like sad Martians had taken over my body and were like, working through the inside of me. Like, it's like you're on the inside looking out and you can't control what this thing is doing.
Yeah.
Or how it feels. You're controlling it, but there's something else inside of you.
Mhm.
Um, and how hopeless that feels.
Yeah.
And but I mean, like some of the posts that I get the most feedback on are when I talk about being alcoholic and also having been suicidal in the past. Like, listen, I keep it in my back pocket. It's like something that, and I don't think I'm not worried about it because I know I'm not going to act on it.
Yeah. And I think part of like my job and in my professional life as, a therapist and a PA in my I say my brick and mortar, even though I do a lot of virtual
Yeah.
um telehealth. But then also with Sylvia Soul, there is um this creation of this openness and understanding that it's a conversation we have to have, number one. And number two, there's no it's to really step out of that shame, to get out of the shame
Yeah.
of feeling, number one, that you feel inadequate, number two, that you're willing to change it. And
Yeah.
I love that, that term agency, because it gives us ownership and it moves us from victim lack surviving into an empowered state of I have the agency
Hmm.
to choose something different and
Yeah.
to step out. For you, like, you stepped out of what would be a glamorous job because, to me, that you had an awakening. You looked in the mirror and
Yeah.
you felt like, I cannot stay here.
Yeah, I think it would have been really a bad bottom for me in terms of drinking. Like it'd be a really bad place. I'd already gone through a depression in the late 90s that lasted about 2 years where I mean, this is the thing. I don't understand it, how I continue to succeed as I'm like at the lowest point, like sitting at my desk crying. It's just, I sometimes get really bummed out when I think about the things that, I can't do this, but the things I passed up, the things that I didn't do that I could have done, like I could have been an editor, I could have had a magazine, I could have done those things. Like people were grooming me for those positions,
Yeah.
and I didn't want them, first of all.
Yeah.
And there's a part of me, my vanity, of course, would have loved that. And I was really, honored that these really important media people were seeing something in me that I could do it. But at the same time, I knew that like I couldn't do it. I just couldn't, I don't have it in me to do it, I am too scared of falling into a depression and having to perform, because it is a performance,
Yeah.
because I know people who do it. And even if they're very earnest about it and like, they have the best intentions, you're still performing to an extent in those roles. So I knew that I was scared to take that kind of role on because there was so much at risk if I wasn't able to pull it off. Like I could lose everything.
Yeah.
So there's still that, the stakes are lower. I work for myself now. I went in-house with a couple of fashion brands. I went from journalism to marketing in about 12 years ago. I was working for a denim company here, and I was doing content creation for them. It's back when blogs were really big. But I was getting them in magazines. I was getting them in Vogue and like the New York Times and different publications because I knew people. I had contacts from my time in New York. And it is really who you know in this kind of thing.
For sure.
So yeah, so I knew the right people and was able to be successful doing that for a couple of Southern fashion brands. And then decided to do my own thing about 7 years ago and started the Callaway, which is my consulting company. And I went through a depression while I was, working at the Callaway. I'm really glad that I had a super, super smart and savvy and hardworking number two who was able to like sort of hold things together for me while I dealt with it. That
Yeah.
one was a little bit slow. I think I was starting perimenopause, which has been the one of the worst things that's ever happened to me. Like the hormone thing. I mean, it's seriously, and like I said, I've gone through a lot of shit, but
Yeah.
like this hormone thing
It's
is a whole other level.
It's a whole other level. It brings in a whole other level of of
Instability.
growth opportunities because
Yeah.
because it creates a lot of emotional instability.
Oh
And
my God.
yeah, I'm right there with your sister. So I mean, it's definitely something that can take over. um I want to
And
go.
it just I want to say real quick, it just complicates the whole depression process and anxiety process too, because like I just came out of a bad depression in January. Like I was in a pretty deep depression for most of COVID. Like I had another heartbreak and I moved into my house after an 18-month renovation and didn't have anybody to show it to. And I was having a huge 50th birthday party and that got canceled and like all these things that were supposed to happen. And I closed my company in May of 2020. So I just went wrong,
Yeah.
um, and have really struggled for
Yeah.
the past couple of years and have only honestly been able to pick it up and get to where I'm going. But I think that all that to say, I think that it's been complicated. The mental health complications have been amplified
For
by
sure.
that.
And for a
And yeah,
and we can speak to that for a hot second because I think that's an important thing to even talk a little bit about, because
yeah,
for a woman, her mental health is so very much tied to estrogen and
yeah,
progesterone and the dance that they do. And that, progesterone is influenced by cortisol. And where does cortisol come from? Well, that comes from stress. And if we are
yeah,
living a very like go hustle, stressed out all the time on, and we don't allow ourselves to feel and pull back and really take stock of where we are, our cortisol levels stay high. Well, what happens to the body is that then those high cortisol levels cause us to stay in more of a fight or flight sympathetic nervous system state. And even
yeah,
though we can mask that really well, and often it comes across as super busy and super focused and super engaged and multitasking queen, it eventually will spit us out the other end like dehydrated and dried up and like what just happened to me, because
yeah.
you can't stay in that state. You
Mm-mm.
can't stay there. And that's so much of what I hopefully teach other women mostly, is that it's that honoring, it's that feeling, it's that slowing down. And I love that, number one, you're so open about everything. But also I want to talk a little bit more about, you mentioned the asking for help, and I
Yeah,
how hard it is to actually ask for help. And I'm actually going to record another podcast that's going to be right around here because it's Halloween-ish. It's October, and it's about how we ghost ourselves, how we really
mm-hmm.
don't show up for ourselves
Mm-hmm.
because we're so afraid of what? What do you think people are so afraid of when it comes to mental illness? And why do you think so many people engage more about the post when you share vulnerably and say, I have struggled with fill in the blank?
Yeah, because they feel it too, and they like, I feel like I speak for a lot of people, and, like, I talk to people about this stuff all the time. I get DMs about it. I get friends asking me to talk to their friends. I get people calling me for advice. And I'm not, I'm definitely not sanctioned to give advice. And I preface that up front. But I do think that, and perimenopause is something I would bring that up around a man quicker than anything.
Yeah.
Like I think we've got to all talk about mental health and what's happening to women's bodies as we age a lot more publicly. And those conversations have really opened up over the last 5 or 10 years, and it's been interesting to watch. And
Mhm.
it's definitely led to my comfort with it. I think there were definitely people who I think that, we did not tell that I was going to rehab, but like, I don't care.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that comes with perimenopause and aging in general for me and for a lot of
Yeah.
other women is you get to this state of I'm kind of done pretending.
Oh
Like
God.
really over making my life look a certain way for your approval or for your critique or judgment. Like I don't give a rip. Like it doesn't
Yeah.
matter to me. What you think about me is none of my business.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. There's a lot of comfort in turning, being in middle age. And
Yeah.
like I think about the things I'm gonna lose, but then I try to, think about the things that I'm gaining, like just the moving closer to potential retirement.
Yeah.
And finding a partner and finding somebody to spend that time with. There's things to look forward to, but losing the collagen is a real bummer.
Yeah.
And, all these bodily changes really are hard. And it's just I don't feel like we are not prepped for this
We're
stuff.
not. But you know what's really awesome is I'm gonna just throw this out there because you're in this space of fashion and putting these kinds of images out for women. Like even just being a spokeswoman for an aging woman who looks dynamite because you look fabulous and
Yeah.
you are to me like iconic. Like I look at you and especially some of the fabulous because I follow you on your social stuff and everyone should follow Libby because she's awesome. But it's also because you do this wonderful thrifting and I love thrifting. It's my favorite thing in the whole world to
You
get
too.
a thrifted piece. Like I'll go and I'll be like, "Oh my gosh, did you see I just got this like designer whatever?" And I'll be there like taking a picture of the label going, "Is this designer?"
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because I
yeah.
don't know the fashion people like you do.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But I mean, I'm definitely I'll look for the cashmere, I'll look for I'll look for all the good stuff
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I just love that. I love repurposing it. Number one, it just feels good to me to kind of recycle it. But
Yep.
then also it feels like I don't know, I just love a bargain. It just
I do too. I do too. It's like there was this woman I knew in New York. She owned a boutique, and like I was like, oh my God, she must love like Jen must love to go to flea markets. And I'm like, I'll bet you have so much fun. Where do you secondhand shop? I insert name of city. And she was like, oh, I don't buy secondhand. And I'm like, why? She was like, why pay less when you could pay more?
see, I don't get that logic.
I thought it was ironic, but it was really funny. Like, why pay less when you could pay more? I thought it was just so funny. But no, I feel the exact opposite. It's like it's totally fun to get a bargain. And like I got this shirt when I was in Southern California last week, and I have on a pair of pants I got in Idaho, and like all secondhand, all vintage. Um, and I looking around my house, it's like everything is secondhand,
Yeah.
whether it's handed down from the Callaways or Easterlies or something I've gotten on my own.
Yeah.
So it's fun. It makes it more interesting, honestly.
It does. So I want to touch upon something you said earlier. I jotted down a few things that really jumped out at me. One of
Yeah.
the things that you also says, I think if I have your words correctly, and I want to speak more to this, is you said it didn't align with my constitution. Did I
Yeah,
say
yeah,
that
yeah.
correctly? So let's talk about that because part of what I do is help, especially, and we didn't touch upon this, but a lot of what the work that I do is healing trauma uh,
Yeah.
from and understanding that you have to peel back the layer of trauma and learn to love yourself before you're going to be invested in honoring yourself with good food, with getting help that you need, with moving your body and feeling good about it instead of picking it apart with all sorts of judgment and self criticism. And then moving into that space of being the magnet so that you can attract the things that you want in your life. But you've got to pour into you first. And
Yeah.
sometimes we have to remove the layers of unhealed trauma of feeling unseen as a child or feeling not being able to be authentically you, which a lot of us feel,
Mhm.
and have to rid ourselves of those beliefs. But then there comes a point in time where you had that sort of awakening. You looked in the mirror, and then you realized that there was this. Um, it didn't align with your constitution, and you did a pivot. So
Mhm.
to me, part of the work that I do is helping women understand what it is to align mind, body, soul. Because we talk about all things mind, body, soul. And to me, when you said that word, that
Mhm.
was in my mind aligning mind, body, soul. So speak to that and tell me what that process was like for you and what that looks like you living that now. How are you living your constitution?
Was that in reference to being an editor-in-chief magazine thing? It was, wasn't it? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that definitely, I think, comes down to maturity and having experienced things and knowing yourself. That was, I mean, that would have been in my early 30s when those opportunities were happening. And I think I was so deep in it at that point. I didn't even know what I didn't know, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but like more reflection as I get older and I start to fall into that like regret cycle of, oh, I didn't do it and I could have. I start thinking about, and if it would have been easy to do it, it would have been really hard. I would have fought for it. And, so I'm not saying that I was just going to be like rolled into this, but I had the right people on my side.
Right.
But I think just realizing that it would not have been something that would have been pleasant or fun. It would have been really, really stressful. And my way of handling stress is to internalize it. And especially at that point, and it would not have been good for my health. I think it would have been like, I can imagine lots of different drugs being involved. It's like I didn't ever dabble in that area really, but like it's like I could totally see myself falling in with that whole cliche.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I think it comes down to maturity. I think it just comes down to realizing that sometimes what other people think that you need,
Mhm.
if you don't, it's like it's okay.
Yeah.
And those regrets are normal because it's like, well, what could have been? Everybody does that. But like just knowing that ultimately I'm better off not having check that box.
And I think part of that is this: sometimes in life we have opportunities where we can chase the golden carrot of, okay, I'm this close to having everything I want, or I think this is what success looks like, so I'm going to just keep pursuing it at all costs, and
Yeah.
realizing that it's not good for our health, our physical health, nor our mental health, more potentially our relationships in life. And we have to do a pivot. We have to give ourselves permission to get a do-over, to go, you know what, I know the world puts their stamp of approval on this looking like what success is in life,
Yeah.
but this does not align with my constitution. And I just love that phrase, that because if we think about, a constitution that governs the world,
Yeah.
we have an internal constitution that governs and kind of rules we, how we want to live our life. And
Yeah.
do our actions actually align with our constitution? Do we love ourselves? And are the actions that we're taking in our life and the choices we're making, are they loving to ourselves? Are they really what's best for our body, mind, and soul? Like, do they align?
Yeah.
I think that that's just such a great phrase that, you know, um, living your constitution and recognizing that there are probably some guiding principles that we all maybe need to take stock in and go,
Yeah.
how am I living my life and who's in charge here?
Yeah.
To say, you know what, I have the ability to pivot and maybe step out of the hustle culture, to step out of what is looks successful in the eyes of the world, let go of how other people judge us, what they think about us, and just kind of take stock and give ourselves permission to go, how do I want my life to look? And am I willing to potentially feel the criticism, the judgment, the questioning, the speculation of what are you doing? And say, you know what? I'm aligning with my constitution.
Yeah. 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 Totally.
I love that.
I know, right? I'm doing what I know is good for me, is going to make me happy and keep me well. I think that's really, really important. Sometimes I'll have these moments of, it's usually while I'm traveling and doing something like, I'm like, "Ah, I'm feeling very adult, because that's the big lie that everybody thinks, that you eventually feel like an adult. You never feel like an adult.
Yeah.
Um, but it's like, I love my life. I love that I get to do this and make these choices and be in these places.
Yeah.
Um, that does align with my constitution.
Yeah.
So, but it is figuring out what you want, what you have, what you need to sacrifice, to what you're willing to sacrifice to get to those places.
Yeah.
And I think I play with my, whenever I get upset about something lately, I've been realizing how scared I am, like how much fear and shame are the traumas that I deal with. And like surmounting those is kind of the goal for the rest of my life, I think. Peeling back what expectations are, releasing those, and creating my own bars for success, and
Yeah.
figuring out what those look like
That's
that
awesome.
do align with my constitution.
Yeah. Well, I just created, you probably don't know this, but I just created a program. I just launched it last week
Oh,
and it's
wow.
called Unbecoming.
Ooh.
And it's the idea, and it's a total mind, body, soul, peel back the layers and heal in unison with your body as a tool, as the vessel, as the instrument of your healing,
Yeah.
incorporating those mind body principles. And it literally is the unbecoming of everything that we had to become to survive
Mm.
in order to really become who you were meant to be.
Mm.
And it is this unraveling, it's the undoing, it's the peeling back the layers of all of the things that we adorn ourselves with, that we think we need to have in our wardrobe,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
put on, so the world goes, oh, look at you, you're successful. And it's really this ability to look into the mirror and kind of have that aha moment that you had and go, what the hell, like, am I living my constitution? And do I have the courage to actually go inward and start peeling back those layers of shame and fear and guilt, and making that a process of unbecoming everything that you became, that you thought was what you needed to be. And it's
Yeah.
really stripping away back down to our core vulnerability and getting back to what we truly are. And I believe that we are love to our core.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
No,
we have,
you're right. That's the most, yeah. You
and
have to move forward with that for sure.
you have to do what?
Move forward with that. Like that has to be the motivating factor, is like,
Yeah.
spreading love and happiness, and being happy, and you being happy is going to make other people happy, is going to allow you to help other people be happy.
And ironically, it's the work of looking at, what we consider the ugly parts of ourselves, the things we don't want to share, the things, we started this podcast with you being so open about, look, I'm an open book. I'll tell you anything. I struggled with all these things.
Mhm.
And at at the core nugget of all of that was your returning to loving you. It was about, are the things in your life aligning with your constitution in that they are loving gestures toward you? And at
Yeah.
various points in your life, you had a come to Jesus meeting, as we say in the South, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
pull up a chair.
Right? Oh, yeah, there you go.
And you kind of go, no,
Yeah.
this is not, this is not it. And doing the hard work, doing the pulling out the ugly, giving ourselves permission to talk about the things we don't want to talk about, airing out our laundry, so to speak, and saying, here are my guts, everyone. You want to take a look? Yep, that's what they look like.
Yeah.
That's so freeing, number one. And it's also the work we have to do to get underneath the core of finding and returning to our essence of love, and then
Yeah.
spreading love and giving people permission basically to love themselves by honoring every part of themselves, mind, body,
Yeah.
and soul.
Yeah. And it's like being willing to let go of things too that, like, have served you in the past that are not serving you anymore.
Absolutely. And we cling to those,
Yeah.
cling desperately to those ideals, even though they don't serve us, because the brain is hardwired to go to the familiar, to things that
Yeah.
keep us safe. And often change is scary. And so we avoid that, even though it's not good for us. It's toxic, it's unhealthy. We hang on to it. And the irony of that is we can't receive anything when we are so gripping tightly to our knowns, even though our knowns are toxic and unhealthy and are not moving us forward and definitely not allowing us to align with our constitution. We hang on to them for dear life until
Yeah.
something happens, whether it's perimenopause or whether it's looking in the mirror and going, I don't know who that person is. And you just finally let go. And when you let go, ironically, that's when you actually have the hands to receive. That's
Yeah.
when you can receive love. You can receive help. You can receive the ability to start feeling so you can heal.
Yeah. For sure. For sure. That's beautiful.
Wow. Well, Libby, I know you have to run, so I'm going to be mindful of your time. Is there anything that you really want to impress upon anybody that would be listening, like you've shared so openly? So thank you for being willing to talk about the scary things, to talk
Mhm.
about the hard things, to bring light your own struggles in the hope that they can help someone else. So, you know, I know the work that I do is, specifically in mental health, and you're in the fashion and glamour world, but is there something that you could kind of, if you had to sum things up and say, this is what I want anybody listening to this as a takeaway, knowing that you have um such a great history of being an advocate for women in marketing and advertising, and then the fashion world, especially when we as women are so very critical of ourselves, how we look, what we're wearing. Do I look as good as her? Oh my god, she's wearing the same thing I am. Do I look fat? So I mean,
Yeah. I
which
know.
what would be your takeaway for any woman that's listening to this? I guess I could say man too, um, as a takeaway for how fashion and mental health and loving yourself all swirl together, what would be
Yeah.
the takeaway?
Well, I think this is something I was in AA for several years early on, and like, something I heard in there that I think about a lot is like when you're at a party and you're uncomfortable, and you can insert party can stand for whatever, whatever situation. You're at a party and you're uncomfortable and you see somebody there who looks like they're having the best time. And they're engaging with everybody and they're being the person that you wish you could be, is that you're comparing your insides to somebody else's outsides. And I think about that a lot because there's this pressure to be that person, to be the sparkly person, to be on. And you don't know what somebody else is going through. So it's almost not fair to put people, like, the objectification of fashion is really, it's tough. It's hard. I know it makes people feel bad about themselves. I know that it can be empowering, but like it's it's a world of smoke and mirrors, and more people know that now than they used to. That, like, it's not, there's tons of airbrushing, there's tons of clips. Like on a photo shoot, you think that the clothes fit perfectly, they don't. There's pins and big clamps,
Really?
and there's photos. Oh God, yeah, no, none of that stuff fits. It's
Why do we do that to
like there's
ourselves?
big gaps in the back of the skirts on models, and like, they just hold it together, like they don't fit it. It's like we're creating these ideal images. I mean, that's not every case, but yes. Um, we're creating these ideal images that are unrealistic for women to live up to. So
Yeah.
there's been a big movement. You can see it when you look at an ad campaign or a magazine or a runway. It's like there is more diversity in terms of, race and size and different aspects like that. But it just, there's a lot performative about it. And I'm looking forward to the day when it just feels really automatic and it's not like notable to have somebody who's a 16 on the runway, or for us to think that they look just as beautiful as Cindy Crawford.
Or
Or
have one of us, like middle-aged perimenopausal women, strutting our lack of collagen and maybe body parts not where they used to be, like,
yeah,
right? We need to
yeah. Exactly. But that's kind of the fun to return to the supermodel thing. Like, you really should watch, like, there's a great show on, is it Paramount or Apple Plus? It's the supermodels. It's about Cindy Crawford, Christy Turlington, Naomi Campbell, and Linda Evangelista.
Oh,
And it's so good. It's really, really good. And they peel back a lot of that, like what they were forced to do and like what the smoke and mirrors of it all.
yeah,
Um, and how, they've only gotten to the point now where they feel like they can be true to themselves in a lot of ways, or, how hard it was to be true to themselves back in the day.
yeah. They weren't
Yeah.
living their constitution, Libby.
Yeah, exactly. But like women are able to now, and like there's a lot more freedom, but like it's not, we're still held to different standards.
We are, and there's still work to be done. And I just love this juxtaposition of you being in fashion and all about what we adorn ourselves with, and yet the conversation has really been about getting naked. The conversation
Yeah,
has really been about
yeah,
stripping away all the things that make us look pretty, and
yeah,
really just looking, standing naked and saying, what's inside, and how do I love this vessel no matter what I put on it? Like, and it's really about what we put in it that
yeah.
shines out and makes us beautiful.
And
It's
and that's something like to think about. Like at these, I think that's something when you peel it back, like you can go to a dinner party, like a fancy fashion dinner party, and be dressed in the perfect outfit and look phenomenal. But if you can't hold a conversation at the table, you're not going to get invited back. It's like there's, it ultimately does matter what's on the inside. That's what's going to prove what's on the outside. So nobody is looking for somebody who doesn't have something to say. It's like people really value a point of view and an original point of view, which means totally living up to your constitution, aligning with your constitution. Is like being honest.
yeah,
And you know
yeah, being honest in a world that is full of dishonesty.
yeah.
You know,
And that was kind of a metaphor that wasn't meant to be taken entirely literally, but it's like basically it really still is what's on the inside. um Even in the world of artifice, ultimately that's what's going to get you through.
well, and that's beautifully stated, because what's on the inside is goodness, and even buried under layers of beautiful clothing, or buried under layers of pretense and masking. um when we're willing to do the work of really disrobing and
Mhm.
uncovering, we can find that we truly are worth the investment of what it takes to love ourselves. And whether that's, going to rehab or taking medicine or going to therapy or doing a course like what I offer, like all of those things move you forward in life and allow you to live a life that really does align with your, I think that's what we're going to call it, aligning with your constitution.
Nice. I like that. No, no, I'm glad I was able to coin a or, spin a term there.
I love it. Well, Libby, thank you so much. And well, you're going to have to come back. So we're going to have to just come up with another fun topic to talk about. Maybe we'll dive deeper on one of those specific topics next
Love
time.
it. I'm
So
in. Love to
awesome.
spend time with you.
It was great to see you, and I will chat with you again very soon.
It's good. Bye.